I feel like because I had so much responsibility early in life, I wanted to get away from poverty and some of the hard circumstances I went through. So I just had the fuel in me, the motivation to just push myself as far as I could go.
Welcome to the Awakened Anesthetist podcast, the first podcast to highlight the CAA experience. I'm your host, Mary Jean, and I've been a certified anesthesiologist assistant for close to 2 decades. Throughout my journey and struggles, I've searched for guidance that includes my unique perspective as a CAA. At one of my lowest points, I decided to turn my passion for storytelling and my belief that the CAA profession is uniquely able to create a life by design into a podcast. If you are a practicing CAA, current AA student, or someone who hopes to be one, I encourage you to stick around and experience the power of being in a community filled with voices who sound like yours, sharing experiences you never believed possible. I know you will find yourself here at the Awakened Anesthetist podcast. Welcome in. Hello, Awakened Anesthetist community. Welcome back to your process series. This is the last process episode in 2024. After this, the podcast is going to take a few weeks break as I sort of retreat inward for the winter. And I have a personal retreat coming up that I'm excited to go on and just do all of the year-end celebrations. And of course, my kids being home for a couple weeks sort of puts me out of my normal routine. And then the podcast will be back in late January of 2025 and continue through March. And that will conclude season 4, which is sort of hard to believe. And I'm just really excited to be in front of this mic yet again, speaking with all of you. Today's process guest is Chabely Rodrigez. I'm really excited to get to share this episode with you all. I've been wanting to do one of these process episodes with Chabely for months and months. And actually, some of you may remember that she's been on the podcast once before when she did her CNBC Millennial Money piece. We just did a really brief behind the scenes of being on CNBC and what that Millennial Money piece meant to her, but it wasn't her full process episode. And so I knew I wanted to have her back on to really share her full journey to become a CAA. And then, of course, we all know her from at CAA Lifestyle over on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, where she shares a lot of day in the life, a lot of what it felt like to be her when she was a student on through where she is now, which is transitioning into locums work. And in this process episode, we're really going to meet Chabely in a new way. She's been wanting to find the right way to share more of herself with her growing number of followers and really take them along her journey in an authentic way. And I've been wanting to do this process episode with her. So we sort of collaborated and decided that this would be a really great way for her to share more of herself with all of us and for us to get to meet who she is really behind her online persona. And I just want to say thank you to Chabely for being just so honest and raw and authentic with this conversation. You're going to hear that she shares her experience with domestic violence, as well as being a first-generation Mexican-American woman growing up in New York, and just her really unique journey to become a CAA. And as you get to know her and love her on any of her social platforms, it's helpful to remember that everyone has a unique journey and story. And Chabely really sheds some light on why she's so focused on financial freedom on her social media platforms and where that all stems from, and really what her plans are moving forward, what she wants to share and bring us all along with in her own personal journey. And so I'm just really excited for everyone to get to know Chabely a little bit more, a little bit deeper. This episode's really going to expand any AA students who feel like they had to sacrifice a lot of themselves in order to just push through some barriers that, weren't there for maybe other AA students or other perspectives who are around them. This episode's also going to expand people who feel like they don't fit the typical persona of who becomes a CAA, or maybe you look around the operating room and you feel like a little disconnected from the other people who are doing similar jobs as you. Any CAAs who love the AA profession and want to learn more about how to leverage it to create financial independence. So this episode is certainly going to land with so many different people for many different reasons. And I'm just so grateful for Chabely to share her story here with me. And I hope you all enjoy meeting her and getting to know her a little bit more. All right, here we go. Maybe let's get started with the rapid fire so I can ask you personal questions and it's okay.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good.
This one was really interesting when Sarah, the September process guest, answered this. What's something that never gets old?
Going on hikes and having amazing views. I feel like that's always a breath of fresh air and just beautiful to take in.
Love it. What's been your favorite hike?
The Rocky Mountains was very beautiful, and I did a couple of hikes recently in New Mexico, and we started off in what looked like a desert, and then we went into it, and there was a lake at the bottom of it, and the skies were like so blue, and there's also these beautiful clouds. So I think those are my two favorite right now.
Love it. I know you've been doing so much travel too. It's fun to watch you on social media. So tell us how much time you spend on social media. You kind of have a unique CAA job or adjunct to your job. How much time are you spending daily on socials?
It's all over the place. Currently, I work 3 13-hour shifts. So, I have these days where I'm very focused on work. And then the days where I'm like recovering from work and I'm trying to catch up on social media. So it's, I would say, still a lot of time on social media, but mostly I just enjoy seeing what other people create. And then sometimes I get inspired and do my own thing and make my own videos. So all over the place, but definitely a lot of time.
I have a content creator question. Are you doing any social media on work days, or do you feel like it's too different of a brain, like two different brains?
I try, but it's definitely, a switch that I just feel like I have to turn off while I'm at work. Being a locum, contractor, I'm still newer to the group, so I still want to do everything that I can to do a good job when I'm at work. So I feel like, when I was at my W-2 and I had been there for a long time, it was easier to kind of do multiple tasks in one place. But right now I tried more to focus on my job. So I try to turn off some of the social media stuff while I'm at work.
Yes, that is very smart because the temptation for me is there. But yeah, it's just, I'm PRN. So it's like, I don't want people to see me on my phone at work, but it's tempting. Yeah, it's hard. Okay, favorite case to give anesthesia, maybe now in this new locums world that you're working in?
Favorite case, I still think that neuro, just like the drips and the organization and the lines that, are put in. And I feel like that is still one of my favorite cases to get into and just kind of switch things up, because to me, there's so many ways to do a TIVA. So I enjoy that it's, in my opinion, a bit more creative than, putting the gas and kind of titrating the gas. So it's just a nice way to switch things up. So I would still say neuro is one of my favorite type of cases.
And you get to do neuro in your locums?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, last one, favorite question of mine. What's your best coffee shop order?
So there's actually a coffee shop in the West, which is called Dutch Bros. And I went to Colorado, and my boyfriend and I were just so excited to have Dutch Bros again when we went to New Mexico. So we have I think it's just oat milk latte. And I think they just do extra coffee in their shots. So it's really good. That's my favorite.
I'm just now kind of tuning in to the Dutch Bros. So maybe next time I'm traveling, I'll look for it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. Let's start off with your cultural background, your upbringing, and that's going to be such a focus of what we talk about today. So I'd love to hear just how you grew up and how it maybe shaped you.
I feel as though the way I grew up is different than a lot of people in the AA world and maybe in medicine, but my parents were farmers. When I was 8 years old, they started a farming business, and they did that to support 5 children. I was the second oldest. So early on in the business, I was very involved, and I feel an integral part of the business. So from middle school through high school, During the summer breaks, we would spend time on the farm. And then during holidays, actually, I really didn't look forward to holidays because that meant that I would be working. So a lot of work on the family business. And so my parents had, mostly vegetables. They had tomatoes, and just to kind of paint the picture of what the farm looked like, this was all in upstate New York. So we would harvest the vegetables, and then we would clean them up for the farmer's market the next day, go to the farmer's market and sell it, and then repeat the process in the evening for farmer's markets in the next day. So it was very busy. Growing up, that was, kind of the focus of our family, just making sure that our family business was thriving. And in addition to that, my parents, they decided to keep my siblings and I in school in New York City, but they were primarily in upstate New York. So this meant that there were weeks during the school week, they weren't at home with us. So that was another set of responsibilities that I had very early on. And so that meant that, I had to, with my older sibling and sometimes my younger sister, we were in charge of making sure that we ate dinner, that we got home from school, that the house was clean. And that wasn't always done because we're still children. So my home wasn't always like the tidiest. So I feel like that was just another layer of growing up with a little bit of shame. And then on top of that, I did experience domestic violence. So lots of layers and responsibility growing up.
Mm. Yeah. And I know a little bit about your story, and maybe some people listening do as well, because you've shared a lot through CAA Lifestyle, your YouTube channel, and your Instagram, and on TikTok. And I know today we really want to dive into more of how your childhood shaped you and really is driving you towards financial independence, and how that has become such a pillar of what you want to talk about and share with the world. I wanted to just go back and have you shed a little bit more light on what it felt like as a first generation Mexican American, what dynamic that added to your childhood.
So they came to the country when they were, I believe, in their 20s. And they didn't have a guide on how to do things. So I feel like for a long time they were doing all sorts of jobs, and they never really picked up English. That meant like when I was in school that they weren't, the parents that were present for like parent teacher conferences. They weren't holding us necessarily accountable to do well in school. Obviously, they wanted us to do well, but I feel like that's just another layer of responsibility that first generation students with parents that don't know English have to navigate. Yeah, and they also still barely know English. They've been in the country for over 30 years. And when my mom says a couple of sentences in English, my siblings and I are like, wow, Mom, that's so good. Like, good for you. And they still were able to run a business, which is still incredible that, in New York City, I feel like it's credit to how many languages are accepted in New York City. And I feel like that's why they were able to thrive. But yeah, they never went to school in the US. They did go to school in Mexico, but they were limited overall, I feel like, in the types of jobs they could do because they didn't go to school and they didn't learn English for many years. They've picked up some of it now, but even then, when my mom met my boyfriend, she couldn't really understand everything he was saying. And it's just regular conversational English. So, yeah.
And your parents wanted to keep you in New York City public schools, I assume, because they thought that was the best exposure for you guys to progress in your education?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And what was school like for you if you had all this work before and after school? It sounds like on holidays and weekends. Were you like trying to be an all-star student, or it was just a struggle to stay awake during class?
It was kind of a mix. So there's actually, I think, a phenomenon where if you're born earlier in the year, you tend to be a stronger student because you're more developed. Yeah, when you go to
Really?
school. So actually, I think that's a big reason why I was I was a very good student my entire life.
Mm.
I mean, there's also the aspect of my parents did want us to do well in school, but not, over the farm. At some point, that was more of the
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. But when I was growing up, my dad would make me do math problems, and he would tell me to write, like, he would just give me assignments when I was in elementary school and just kind of push me. When I was in school, in high school, there were times where I was in honors classes and I dropped out of some of them because I remember just taking in how much work it was going to be to do some of my honors classes. And I'm like, I can't do that after school's done. Some things I can manage and do well in, but in certain classes that involved using a computer and doing projects a lot at home, that wasn't something I could handle. So I dropped out of some of those classes. But I set a lot of boundaries with my parents. And I do believe that's why I was kind of the beacon for like the violence, because I would push back on what they wanted. Um, but as I grew older, they became more accepting. But it was still kind of like a back and forth. But yeah, when I got to college, were they were let me separate from the work. And so once I got into college, I really got to focus on my studies and not be distracted. And that's where I feel like I did very well.
Mm-hmm. Were you able to confide in anyone in the school system about why you were having to drop out of classes or about the domestic violence you guys were experiencing and you in particular were experiencing the most?
Um, I never did that because I was just afraid that my family would be separated. Um, and my parents, I didn't want them to be deported or, have any issues. So never really talked to an adult about it.
Mm-hmm. Were your parents legal immigrants?
No.
Okay.
They've become citizens recently, but
they have become citizens. Yeah. So, but while you were growing up, that was an additional fear of yours. If I tell anyone, my parents will have to leave.
Yes.
Wow. Wow, Chabely. So some repair must have happened.
Yeah. I feel like because I had so much responsibility early in life, I wanted to get away from poverty and some of the hard circumstances I went through. So I just had the fuel in me, the motivation to just push myself as far as I could go. I also had my older sister who she was more of like the people pleaser, I feel like. So she didn't experience the same things I did, but she was there with me for a lot of it. And so even that relationship isn't always perfect, but she is supportive when it matters. And she has believed in me. And I would say sometimes maybe she doesn't believe in herself, but she's always believed in me. So during college and high school, she was my biggest support system. And then as of late, I've had my partner who I've been with for 4 years. He's also gone through a lot and he's been able to forgive the people in his life. And that's shown me a pathway to forgiveness, I feel like. And so he just constantly reminds me, life is hard sometimes for me, but he's like, just imagine what it was like for your parents who didn't know English.
Yeah, not to excuse the behavior, but to have some compassion for, the people they were that didn't get their own needs met either.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really rough. I'm trying to process how you managed all of this. And I'm just wondering at some point if your parents started to give you some more time to be able to focus in high school. Like, how did you go from high school to college to grad school? Can you give us that journey in terms of your drive?
Again, I feel like my sister was kind of like the people pleaser in a way. And she was the oldest sibling, so she didn't push back so much. And, older siblings sometimes, if the parents kind of depend on them so much and they just take on that role. But for me, I was also one of the older siblings, but I just didn't feel like it was right. Like I was like, no, I should focus on my school. I should go to some of these after school programs. And sometimes that was met with a lot of anger, but then my parents would be like, okay, do it. Like, that's fine. Just do it. And so as I
Mm.
became older, I took on jobs. I worked in McDonald's, and they were like, okay, fine, you can work in McDonald's and you don't have to be at the farm the whole time. And so I was able to establish some independence. I think also my older sister being around, and now being in college, that all started to help, slowly kind of build a way towards being more independent and away from the family business. And so there would just be opportunities that came my way. And I don't know if they said yes to everything, but they just started accepting a bit more of me kind of breaking away from the family business. And then by the time I got to college, I was just like, no, I'm not going to do stuff on the farm. And they were like, okay, fine, you don't have to. And I just got to, I don't know. So I think they still wanted what was best for me at the end of everything. But it was something that we had to work through for a couple of years before I got to college. In college, they mostly just left me alone, and they saw that I was doing well. And, I got really, really amazing internships, scholarships. And I think they saw that it was worth doing my own thing, and they supported me. And yeah, and they just, I think, thought I guess I had a good head on my shoulders and just let me find my way once I got to college.
But you had to fight, it sounds like, to let them give you the chance to find your way. Like, I can do this, give me space and time. Don't tie me to this other thing that they needed you to do.
Yeah.
Wow. What supports did you have in college? I know your older sister, it sounds like she went to college before you, but were there any mentors or influences in college that were like, you can do this, here are those scholarships, or was that all you as well?
I feel like there were some influences like that, but I think just because I'd never really had my parents pushing me in that way, I didn't rely on that much outside support. But there were some positive influences, but I didn't get too close to that many, just because I just felt like I had to take care of things on my own. But I did have a tutor that believed in me. And I remember he told me that he believed I'd be a millionaire one day because he saw I had strong habits. There was like an advisor in one of the programs. Actually, I think a really, really positive thing was I entered this program for minorities in trying to get into research. And so there was just a space for minorities like myself, first generation, looking to get into sciences. And that's where I met my boyfriend. But yeah, there was, people like-minded. Yeah, I guess we supported each other, and there were a couple of advisors in that program that were very supportive as well.
While I'm listening to your story, I can feel my brain like glitching. Like, you didn't have any help or support. Like, it's such a different experience than my own experience, and likely so many people who are listening. Like, it's hard for me to even fathom what it felt like to be you and growing up in that situation. And now, because I feel so connected to all CAAs, to every CAA, my brain's like, wait a minute, like, we got here from very two different places. So I would love to talk about how you found out about the CAA profession, and when that first instance happened where you're like, okay, this is, I think, what I want to do when I grow up.
So I feel like it was not a straightforward journey. I think my journey to AAs started with graduating college and taking a step back from deciding to become a physician and go through medical school.
So you were thinking, I'm going to go to medical school. That was like, okay, gotcha.
Yes. So I did my best during undergrad. And I took after I finished undergrad, my plan was to make my application more competitive. And I took an opportunity at Johns Hopkins University, worked alongside an MD PhD there. And I feel like it was just by doing that, I was able to recognize that, there would be a lot more years of sacrifice ahead. And I did feel like I had sacrificed my childhood. I sacrificed a lot in undergrad, and I wasn't sure if I should keep going on that path. So I looked around at other fields. I looked at dentistry. And then, um, again, I didn't really have that much outside support. I mean, I'm sure people would have been supportive if I was really looking for it, but I just depended on myself. And so I went online and I would look up, MD, like I'm questioning going to medical school, and people were talking about PAs. And so then I was like, okay, this is maybe what I should do. So I then became a scribe so that I could have more clinical experience to apply to PA school. And in doing that, I worked alongside PAs. And I'm like, okay, they actually have a lot of the similar day-to-day responsibilities as the doctors. So that does seem like what I want to do. And, again, it's the expedited timeline. So I'm like, I want to do anesthesia though. So is there a way to do that as a PA? And I looked into AAs, and at the time, there was almost no content. Anesthesia Sal, I think the first to
Mm-hmm.
post anything really. So this was before her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why is there no content? Like, this is crazy. If this field exists, why are there no people? So I did find
Mm-hmm.
a few videos on a PA's platform of AAs.
Really? And what year was this? What year were you looking?
2018.
Okay.
2018 is when I was looking.
Yes. Shout out to Anesthesia Sal, who
Yeah.
her name is Sally. She was one of the initial CAA content creators, and that's actually who I found as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she just had a baby, so I think her content's a little bit less these days. But yeah, she definitely started this out. So
Yeah.
okay, sorry, continue.
No. So at the time, there was no one, which I did want to put content out. And during school, I was like, I do want to do this, but I'm not going to risk my schooling. I'm just going to wait until school's done. But I knew that there was such a gap of knowledge. But the point is, I found these few videos online, and then I looked for shadowing, and I liked what I saw with shadowing, and I applied, and that's how I got here.
Mm-hmm. And what school did you go to, and when did you graduate?
I went to Nova Fort Lauderdale, and I graduated in 2021.
Okay. Were you one of their earlier classes, later classes? Has that school been around for a while?
That school I think it had been around for 10 years when I was there.
That must have been one of the earlier ones. I have lost track at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. And then talk to me about what being a new CAA grad was like in terms of feeling like, you're at the end of this really long journey, or were you sort of like, this isn't what I quite thought? Talk to me about how it felt in that first. I mean, you're not that far out from that, but just when you first started working.
It's definitely intimidating. I feel like at least for me, some people come out of school and they feel completely ready, but I definitely felt like there was a learning curve to it. But where I started working, there were about 5 other new grads. So that was honestly really, really amazing, because we just would catch up with each other and we'd be like, is this, is this normal? So I feel very fortunate that I went to a place that had so many new people that we could go through things together and learn from each other. I feel like that really, really helped early on. And then what was the second part of the question?
Well, I guess I was just sort of thinking, had you been kind of like in this, I'm going to do this, I'm pushing, and then you got there, you graduated CA school, and then everything sort of settled, and you're like, oh, wow. Now for the first time, I'm, dealing with a lot of this, as you said, shame and trauma that has come up. Like, what did it feel like to kind of be at the end of this journey that you'd been pushing yourself alone for?
Well, first, I was still trying to be productive because I feel like that's just what I knew growing up. Just do as much as you can and produce as much as you can. So that's why I think I started my channel too. I was just not used to having free time. I'm like, let me do something with this free time. So I think for a long time, I still was working on working towards paying off my student loans. So I feel like it was finally after I paid off my student loans that I had this moment where I could kind of take in what it meant to have more financial security. And I started watching more psychology videos and just learning more about myself through different psychology videos online. honestly, I still haven't gone to therapy, but I feel like through these psychology videos, I've learned a lot and just been able to reflect on what I've been through. And I still am constantly learning a lot about myself. So it definitely also really, really helped that my partner was very patient with me in a way that, other people had not been before him. And I truly feel like that was so important for my healing process too. I think those two things of just having more time and more financial security, and then also having a very trusting and patient partner really, really helped.
Yeah, and so much of your content is about the freedom found within financial security, financial independence. Do you feel like that is a direct correlation to what you experienced growing up? And can you talk about why you're so passionate about sharing that?
Absolutely. I feel as though now that I'm a few years out of school, I can really take the time to understand what I like doing. And for so long, growing up through college, through AA school and paying off student loans, it was just getting through the stage I was in and just kind of getting by. So I definitely feel like now that I have more financial security, I can just understand who I am much better and also have more peace in my life and enjoy things a little bit more. And so that is part of why I want to make financially focused content and incorporate that with AAs. But I want people to learn from my journey. Again, when I was looking into the field, I didn't really see any examples. And I think about the person that I wish I could find online. And I don't even think everyone has to be an AA. People can take some of these lessons and just, in their own profession, incorporate saving and investing and just learning more about financial independence so that they could have more freedom for themselves.
Mm-hmm. As a content creator, what do you think most resonates? Like, what do people DM you saying? Like, oh, thank goodness you mentioned this, or like, what part of you do you think our community is resonating with?
I feel like people have resonated with making a lot of money out of 2 years of school after undergrad. So I don't know if that's always the best way to resonate with people, but
Why do you think people are so excited about that? Because they think it's a shortcut? Because they think, oh, if I make $200,000, I can buy a big house? Like, or is it, I can see I can have time freedom. I can have freedom of choice because I make more money. Like, what is it about it? Or do they not really say?
I don't know if everyone knows what it is for them, but just I think, especially in this economy, making six figures or making, within six in the 200,000 range, it's pretty hard for a lot of people. There's layoffs in jobs and people are not satisfied. So I think that it's really appealing just thinking about the numbers. But I have talked to people that are doing mock interviews or, I've done some counseling and I tell them this is not going to be an easy path when you graduate. It's going to be very stressful.
Yes.
So if you're not in it, you have to realize that before you go in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress waiting, even though it's 2 years of school, but then it's like a career of managing stress and handling, difficult situations sometimes. So
absolutely.
yeah, it's not a shortcut, is what I try to tell people.
Yeah, it's like, well, you get paid a lot of money because what you have to do kind of takes its toll on you.
Yeah,
exactly. I don't know that
exactly.
people really appreciate that. I do think, obviously there's so much good within the profession. And I do think we are valued in a way that our capitalistic society values people, which is by money. I think we're valued well, but it's not without its costs. So I'm just interested what you think money personally has given you, in terms of like happiness, security, like what are those things that money has given you personally?
It's still something that I'm working on, but definitely the last vacation I went on in New Mexico, that was my favorite vacation. And that was the vacation where I paid for like a hot air balloon ride for my partner's birthday and I got to treat him and he said he loved it. So I feel like for me, it's just given me just peace when I'm experiencing new things. Also the means to experience new things that I would have never done before. And I don't have to worry about paying my rent. I could do both things at the same time and enjoy my life as I'm saving, investing, and taking care of myself. So it's just giving me a lot more opportunity to enjoy life in the present. And I'm slowly coming off the mindset of just, saving for the future and just put everything away, because you never know when something's going to happen, or, when I'm 55, that's when I'll finally get to experience life. I'm starting to enjoy life a lot more now. It's really nice.
And how old are you now, Chabely?
I'm 29.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm just so wowed by the bravery and the tenacity of your story. I just wonder, for people who are listening who maybe resonate with a difficult childhood, one that had abuse or trauma or shame in it, how you manage to take risks. Like, for example, going from a full-time W-2, which is an employed position that's like very stable, to a locums position. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And do you encounter situations in the operating room where you're like, oh, this is triggering me, this is one of my insecurities? Do you just not feel that? Do you have a way to move through that?
So there's a lot. First, I would say, the biggest thing I feel like was having a direction to go in. If you're in an earlier stage of your journey, I think it's important to just have an overall direction, keep an open mind at the same time, because you might change your ideas as you grow and get more experiences. But, you just work towards the direction you want to go in, and then you take small steps towards that. So that's for that stage in life. In terms of becoming, I've always kind of been a risk taker, I guess. I don't know. I've always just been like, you know what, let me just try it out. And it's worked out really, really well. Like I feel like I've always been a bit more bold.
You have. Yeah. I can see that in your story. I mean, just even be able to tell your parents when you're a kid, like, no, I want to go to school. I want to take this extracurricular. Like, that is not something that everyone would probably describe themselves as.
I guess there's like that saying of like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And that's just kind of what I notice. It's like, no one is going to do this for me. I have to put myself out there and try something on my own. And obviously I'm not going to, it's not exactly like do it and then ask for forgiveness. It's more like just ask if I could do it. And most likely it's usually a yes, or, usually works out if you put yourself out there. And so, yeah, I've just always been that person to put myself out there. And I guess, honestly, I feel like I've handled rejection. I've handled, no's a lot. So I just keep putting myself out there, and I take whatever opportunity comes my way and just keep going with that momentum. And yeah, that's always how I've been.
Is there a no in your career or a rejection in your CAA career that you feel comfortable sharing?
There hasn't really been a no. It's more like, I guess, like when I was an undergrad, I would apply to scholarships sometimes, and I feel like it just made me more tolerant to rejection. So mostly like an undergrad is where I faced some of that rejection. And I became more comfortable with it. As an AA, for the most part, it's been pretty good. I would say, I guess I got a rejection, or I feel like it was a soft rejection when I finished my first clinical rotation. And I wasn't necessarily excited to work there, but I did want to just put myself out there and do the interview process. I do feel, coming from poverty, I was very in my shell and very much feeling like imposter syndrome. So I didn't, in my opinion, shine very, very bright. And so I feel like I got a soft no from that place, but it wasn't like a hard feeling. But yeah, I just put myself out there, and I'm like, okay, cool. So next time, it's just, in my opinion, it was more interview practice, or I just put myself out there and see how it goes. And sometimes I want things, and sometimes I don't. I'll still try it and see how it goes and go on from there.
Yeah, you've built your trust muscle in yourself. Like, I can take these little risks early on, and over time, when you see like, okay, I didn't die, I didn't, that's how you learn the skill of navigating failure as an adult. It's like you take little risks along the way. I am interested though, because you just brought up imposter syndrome, and you sound like, things have kind of worked out through everything that you've faced. I can see that this was all meant for you. But I do think it's interesting if you want to touch on the imposter syndrome that, of course, maybe is there too, that maybe people are resonating with.
Definitely. I feel I went through a lot growing up, but I still feel like I was very sheltered. And so then also in undergrad, I focused a lot on studying. And so I feel like there were just certain social things that I never picked up on. And there's still gaps, I feel like, you know, I still feel like I get teased sometimes about certain things. And I'm like, well, that's just me, whatever. At this point, I'm just like, that's just how I am. But as a student, I felt criticism and I was very critical of myself. Yeah, I feel like in the AA world, there's a lot of people that come from financial privilege, and I didn't feel like I could always relate to people in that way. And I wasn't in a sorority in college, so I don't drink. That's a choice I've made pretty early on. Sometimes I'll drink, but I really, really don't drink. So I felt a little bit socially different. Um, so yeah, definitely was in my head about how I was moving through the world, I guess. Something I'm still trying to understand, but I feel like I've worked on it a lot.
Mm-hmm. I just want to let that sink in because I know that's really important to you to share your story of overcoming domestic violence and how financial security has really been a cornerstone of the life that you want to build. I'm just wondering where you see your platform going in terms of talking about CAA financial wellness and, maybe your future in that space.
I definitely feel like as my finances and my journey changes, my content is changing. I'm not really thinking about student loans anymore, and so I'm not really making that sort of content anymore. I feel like going locum, it's a really, really good balance right now of being able to enjoy life and then also work and make, a really good living with maybe working a little less. So I feel like that's the direction I want to take my content, and we'll see if that resonates with people because it's not necessarily content that is going to connect, I think, with the same audience that connected with me in the past. But I feel like my content is going to be reflecting just where I am in life and the directions I'm taking. So I'll try to keep in mind student loan content and, things that other people can relate to. But yeah, I feel like my content is just going to follow my journey to financial independence and also, enjoying the journey at the same time. So I think that's where I'm taking it.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch that. That's more of my angle as well. You commented that a lot of people in the CAA profession come from a privileged background. And I knew that that's my background. And I knew that's my perspective of having things more so handed to me. And I've been wrestling with that myself. I'm just wondering, how do you see the CAA profession moving forward in terms of diversity and a diversification of the type of people we attract?
So I definitely feel sometimes on the outside a little bit, but I feel like I work really, really hard to fit in. And so I do feel like I'm trying to take up skiing. Maybe that's a way I can connect. I want to connect with my coworkers and have a good relationship. But yeah, there are times where I feel like I can't relate to certain things. Also, I grew up in New York City, so that's a more blue mindset. And there's a lot
Yes.
of red in this field. So there are definitely some divisions, but, I just try to I let people have their opinions about certain things. And I do try sometimes to separate certain disagreements and, different points of view and still come together and connect with my coworkers as much as I can. In terms of diversity, I think that pages like mine and like social media, that's how more minorities that don't necessarily have family that are AAs can learn about the field. And that's why I keep doing what I'm doing because I want it to reach people that don't have like that into the AA world. And so hopefully that will keep shaping things to be a bit more diverse. But at the same time, it is, I think, going to attract people that hear about the salary and maybe it's helping and maybe it's also attracting more people that, are focused on the salary. But at the same time, I understand that it's important to take care of ourselves. So I understand why someone would be attracted to the salary. And, I understand the importance of financial security. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we don't want to hide it. We don't need to hide it, but it's also not just the reason you should be becoming a CAA.
yeah.
Okay. One more question, I think, and then maybe we'll make sure everyone knows how to connect with you. So much of season 4 is about how to stay healthy, be healthy, and thrive as a CAA. So many of the resources I'm creating and so many of the interviews that I'm doing, I'm trying to really hit that message home. How do you think being a CAA allows you to be healthy and thrive?
Well, thinking about when I grew up, I would, my parents weren't home. I would eat takeout French fries and chicken wings from wherever. So now I can afford for sure to have more healthy groceries and eat from, organic places. I did also have the benefit that my parents did have a farm. So that's always kind of been in me. But now I can definitely afford that as an adult. And I do believe that, where you are at 55 is influenced by where you are at 30 and like the habits that you have. And so I do feel very financially secure right now where I don't necessarily have to pick up overtime. And so I'm trying to focus on being healthier. That's my goal as I turn 30
Mm-hmm.
is to become a healthier version of myself and not feel so inclined to pick up overtime and just take care of the body that I'm in, and just try to think about things like 20 years down the line. Because I have financial security, it allows me to eat better food and then also have more time to pursue the things that make me happy and, recharge and also have time to, go to the gym and be fit.
I love that. I love that the money has allowed you to prioritize your health and your time more so than any amount of dollars. Like you can't buy your time, you can't buy your healthy.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
totally get that. And I love that. And I love that message. I love ending on that message. How can people connect with you? What's the best way to follow you and talk about all your socials and channels?
So I am a bit overwhelmed, but
So maybe wait a month.
yeah, so actually, yes, please wait a little bit. December is gonna be the best time to connect.
What if we just want to follow you? Just follow you. Maybe not ask you
If you want
tons of
to
questions.
follow, um, the best places are CA Lifestyle on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. Instagram is probably the place where I respond to the most comments, mostly in the comment section, but I do feel like if questions are a little bit too personal, I I want to focus on the questions that are going to answer questions for everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
those are usually the way I prioritize answering questions. So if you want to have a personal one-on-one, that's just message me and we'll talk about that.
And do you think you're going to post more on your YouTube channel? I know you've taken a bit of a pause there because you had so much like educational content initially.
So I still have vlogs from last year,
Mm-hmm.
and so much content from last year that I haven't really touched in a year, haven't really worked on it. That's still what I want to do because I feel like the YouTube community, that's where I kind of grew up and that's how I've connected with content creators and really understood their stories. So that is something I want to go back to. But I want to also just be realistic and not overwhelm myself. But ideally, I'll get these videos done this winter.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't let me pressure you because I certainly am trying to embody the fact that every yes, you say yes to something, it means you're saying no to 1,000 other things. You say yes to a YouTube video, you say no to working out some days, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, and I have been. So I don't want to do
Yeah,
that anymore.
totally.
So
And I think it's really, really honest and valuable to exactly say that I can't create all of this content and also do those things that allow me to be healthy and thrive as a CAA. And I get to have that choice now because, that's the
mhm.
life you worked so hard for. So
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for this conversation, Chabely. I will be sure to put all of your information in the show notes. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what's next for you on Instagram. That's where I tend to connect with you. And I'll be sure to post any new YouTube videos if those ever do come out. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Jean. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you letting me share my story in such a comfortable way. So thank you.
Wonderful. I'm grateful for you. If you loved this episode, I really encourage you to share it with another CAA in your life or AA student or prospective AA that you know. It really helps to get the message about CAAs and our profession out to a wider audience. It also helps share the message of this podcast, which is that this very unique and specialized profession is really uniquely able to help CAAs live their own dream life, to create their life by design, to gain financial independence if they so choose, to break those generational barriers that maybe held their parents back or their grandparents. There's just so many good things about this profession, and no one's really talking about it. And when I first was looking for resources and my own CAA community outside of the few CAAs I knew who I worked with, I couldn't find one. And so it's so valuable now that people like Chabely and Anesthesia Sal, who we mentioned in this episode, and Anesthesia Anonymous, and just so many other content creators who are really taking their time to share their specific journey with the CA profession, because that's truly how our profession is going to grow, in addition to people just meeting us in the operating room and us sharing who we are and what we do. And so I just would really appreciate if you guys would share this podcast episode with someone that you know would be interested or maybe a little confused about what a CAA is or what we do. Other ways to connect with me are on Instagram. You can DM me or find me there at Awakened Anesthetist. You can sign up for my online newsletter. There's a link for that in the show notes. And then also coming up in December, if you're listening in real time, we have our next Making Connections for season 4. This is an opportunity that I host every month. I welcome AA students, CAAs, prospectives, anyone interested or even sort of on the periphery of this CAA community to come and gather. We do a little bit of grounding, we do a little bit of meditation, and then we talk and discuss a theme for the month. We've already done things like boundaries and navigating failure. This month in December of 2024, we're going to do something a little different. We are going to be talking about intention setting and how we want to feel in 2025, but it's actually going to be hosted as an Instagram live, and I've invited 3 other CAA content creators to join me. So it'll be a conversation between those 3 people and myself. Of course, anyone else is also invited to sort of play along with us, do the grounding, the meditation, do the intention setting and sort of the conversation there. And then we're going to open it up for a Q&A for anyone who's there. You'll have a really unique chance to talk to several different types of CAs at different points of their career, people who are doing different things online, and sort of just get a really wide and varied perspective, which is, I think, really valuable. So I'm excited to host that on December 29th. There's going to be more information in the show notes, as well as I'll be posting things on Instagram about it. So just be looking out for that. I think that's all. I hope everyone has a wonderful winter holiday and hopefully a nice little break from school or a few days off from work if you're so lucky. I know this is 4th quarter, so it's like the whole world is resting, but the operating room is ramping up. So it's a little bit of a hard spot for sure for CAAs. Personally, I am going to be taking some time off from the podcast, and I will be back in January of 2025 with more process episodes, more insightful meditative episodes, and of course, the CAA mini-series that I'm running called Understanding Certified Anesthesiologist Assistants, Your Complete Guide. I have a big one coming up about money and how much money AAs make. So I'm excited to share that in 2025. All right. Happy holidays, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful new year, and I'll catch you in 2025.